Disclaimer: we talk about Christianity and the thoughts and ideals of it. If you feel that you may be triggered, we suggest that you click off this video. Otherwise, enjoy.
And we are back. Welcome, guys, to the Midnight Out podcast. Today is we have a special guest on. Say hi if you like.
Hey, everyone.
So this is actually my uncle, and there's a very specific reason if you haven't already seen the title. But today we're going to be talking about religion, and I'd like to clarify that all of us are like kind of atheists, and we'll explain like what that means, because it's like we're not against anything or anything like that, but we're here to just like give out our views and stuff like that. And but yeah, I brought him on because I've heard him talk a lot about studying like atheism, and I'm pretty sure, from what I understand, he's interested in like why other people take their religious views and why other people think that. So I think that's why he's done a little thought process and background check. So I'm gonna start off with we're gonna start off with I'm gonna ask around, like, what do you guys think of atheism? Like, what do you guys think of like religion means to you?
Alright, I guess I'll go first. For me, atheism is less of there is no God, there is nothing happening when we die. I'm more of agnostic, which, for the people that do not know, is I believe that there is a God, I just do not believe in the exact form in which people, go off of. I don't feel like we are set by a book that tells you. I feel like it's just something that you are going to experience when you die. There has got to be something out there that is incredibly higher in power than we are.
Yeah.
It's just impossible that there isn't. So, I don't know.
Yeah. Jeremy?
Interesting. Yeah, so I'm definitely an atheist, and for me, that is, I do not believe there is a God or any kind of higher being out there. Doesn't mean there's no aliens, right?
Yeah.
There definitely could be other life forms, and I would think that it would almost be impossible for there not to be other life forms with as large as everything is. But to describe atheist for me, so atheist, a lot of people put a lot of baggage on that word.
Yeah.
It actually, not too long ago, and still in some countries, it's illegal to even be one or talk about it.
Really?
Yeah. So, but there's a lot of baggage with it as far as like, what does it truly mean? And at the end of the day, all atheist means is one thing: that you have not seen enough evidence to show you that there is a God, and so you choose not to believe. It actually doesn't say that there isn't a God, right? That's a whole other claim. If I actually say there isn't a God, now I have to prove that. The burden of proof's on me, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say that I haven't seen enough evidence myself to believe in some kind of deity.
Yeah, I totally go along with that. I definitely say I'm a little bit more agnostic, and I'd say, so agnostic from my point of view, like agnostic atheist, I'd like to clarify, I'm pretty sure agnostic isn't a religion itself, but it's more of a title. Like, you can say agnostic Christian if you're like you think there's a God, but you're not entirely sure, or agnostic atheist, which means you don't know if there's a God or not, but you're looking for it, right?
Yeah.
You're spot on.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I use the term agnostic is because, like, whenever I think about it, I feel like it's in three different categories. You got left, right, and middle.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, you're Christian, you're heavy left. If you're atheist, you're heavy right. And so I feel like agnostic sits right in that middle ground where, like, you've heard and you're willing to listen.
Yeah.
You just can't say for sure, you know? You don't want to be bound by someone's words or a book that, you know, people just are like, this is right, this is exactly what it is.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think for me, I heard a gentleman by the name of Matt Dillahunty describe it really well, and that is, agnostic is not a belief, but it is a description of that belief. So if I think that there's probably a God out there, but I have some doubt, then I would be a theist agnostic. If I think there is no God out there at all, but you know what, there might be, then I'm an atheist agnostic. If
Yeah.
if I have like for myself, I have seen no God, no evidence whatsoever for a God. So I personally believe there is no God. Doesn't mean I'll always believe that way, right? If I see evidence someday,
Yeah.
but for now, that's the way it is. So I'm straight atheist. I don't have any of the. I don't need the agnostic on my list, but
Yeah.
a lot of people do, and it makes sense. There's nothing wrong with it.
I feel as personally, since I'm a child, I don't feel like I've lived enough years to make a judgment. And it's crazy because I've always seen people like they're born into religion. And there's no necessarily way to change that because I mean you're raised by your parents, right? Or there's exceptions, but so but I feel like kids should be able to, if informed enough, make their own decision of what religion they might want to be, depending on the circumstances. It takes a little time, but for me, I totally believe that like I don't know what's out there, and a lot of people, how they take religion is like life and death, how it came to be, and that's why a lot of people are a part of certain religions. But I have no idea how we got here. I have no idea how it's gonna end, so I'm not gonna say anything about it until I like get to that point. I don't know what's after. I don't know what's created us, so I'm not gonna say anything about it, and I'm just gonna say I don't know. But I'm not set that there is a God. I'm not set that there isn't. I just don't know.
Yeah.
You just said one of my favorite quotes ever. By the way, I don't know. For some reason, human nature in all races across the earth, we have such a hard time saying I don't know. We want to give a reason to everything, right? So it's like, it's okay to say that. It's perfectly okay. We don't have to, I wake up in the morning and I look at the beautiful trees swaying in the wind and I think, my gosh, how could that just be chaos and not created by something? It's okay for me to say, you know what? I don't know. But someday, whether that's a God or not, we're probably going to find out, right?
Yeah.
Either through science or after we die, if there is something.
I've had ideas on that, and I think what it is the reason people don't like saying I don't know, especially in the context of religion, is just because religion is usually tied to your death. And I feel that a lot of people will especially be extremely I wouldn't say like they fight for it, but they definitely will go into heavy debates and arguments on it because it's just you fear death. I feel like a religion, whether it be anything, Buddhism, Christianity, whatever it be, you fear death. It's a way to cope with you dying. It's a way for you to say, you know what, whenever I die, I have a place that I'll be able to go to, and it'll be so easy. But people don't like saying I don't know because that's them not knowing what's going to happen to them when they're dead.
That's definitely an interesting point of view. So to really kick off this podcast, to really enforce the idea that I'm not against like any religion. I have a family friend, I have a close family, which is like my friend's Jason's family, and sometimes we go to church. And I like personally have no problem with it because I'm totally interested in looking at other people's religious views. And I've went to several church camps before. And one of them is you had a book and we would write down long notes and stuff like that, learning about their religion, right? That's what you do at a church. But well, there's more to that. But what I ended up doing, I didn't say I was an atheist or anything, obviously. But what I would do is I would log in the book, like, here's what they believe. Here's like an outside perspective, and here's how to argue as an atheist. And the reason for that is because we watched like two different guys, and they were kind of terrible claims on atheist points of views. And as a Christian, they had to argue against it. So I had to go in there, I had to read scripture, and I had to argue why that atheist was wrong. And it's actually pretty interesting, but I feel like I had a little bit more of a footing being an atheist myself because I know what kind of points of views they have. I know like a little bit of their weak points, and I know how to reinforce it as well. So, I would like to ask a couple questions for our special guest here. And I would like to start off with one of the questions that a lot of atheists had that they brought up a point and we had to defend against is there's like four propositions of Christianity. You have God exists, God is all powerful, God is all good, and evil exists. And maybe some atheists would argue, well, if God exists and God is all powerful and good, how does evil exist, right? So we had to argue as Christians on why evil exists, why there is a God, and stuff like that, and bring up points so that we had a stronger defense, right? And I found it actually pretty interesting. I'd like to add, but what I ended up saying is, because I remember I was talking with I think I was in Kentucky with Jeremy, and we were talking about religion, and he brought up the point, and you can talk about this actually, on how do you think you might feel that like people have religions to like people take part of religions to have a reason for why things are, like the like horse pulling the sun analogy with that religion. They didn't know how the sun rised and fell, so they made up a god for it. I mean, if you'd like to talk about that, you can.
Yeah, it goes back to the I don't know, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to say that. So there's a lot of things I don't know, but it doesn't make me immediately jump to, oh, it must be a god.
Yeah.
Or it must be out of this world, right? Going back to what you were saying, yeah, so it's an interesting discussion around the claims of what the Christian God is. Now, there's 4,000 gods on earth that are worshipped.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to tell which is the right God. But the Christian God, right? So he's all loving, all knowing, all caring. And so one of the easiest questions to ask right away is, and this is kind of a fun one to hear people answer, is if God is all knowing and all powerful and he can create anything, could he create a rock that's too big for him to lift?
Ooh.
That's a really good argument.
I've never heard that one, but that's good.
Yeah.
Huh.
That's so interesting. Kind of like how it runs along the lines of the unbreakable shield and unstoppable spear. Where it's like you don't really have an answer for it. But I guess as a Christian, I would like to argue against that. Like, I'm not saying I'm Christian, but like for a Christian argument, I'd like to argue against it. But with the whole I don't know thing, there was a book explaining how there is 10 easy answers for the denial of God. So they were basically claiming how if you aren't a Christian or a part of a certain religion, then you might be in denial of there being a God, instead of the whole evidence argument, right? So they said, so for number one, if you're in denial that there is no God, there's stuff like atheist, and demtholigism. It's like fairy tale, something like that. I don't remember, but like atheism, yeah, it's the big one, right? That you might be in denial of there being a God, which is, I feel like, a misconception.
Right.
So the question of God's power is stuff like polytheism, dualism, stuff like that. God is all good. You have Satanism, and deism, which is like God being a snob. And then for evil exists, you have idealism, which basically means is you like whatever you believe, you idolize that, right? Just to like block out the evil. So, and I guess a couple of claims that Christians have made is that I remember hearing at the church camp that people have the choice to do good. Instead of like, because some atheists might say, like, God doesn't control us. Like, what's the whole point of free will if God created us, right? And they had arguments like people have choice to do good. And for the death argument on why people die with God is all good, like why does it kill people, is because death is a cause of sin with the evil argument. And then they have also argued that atheism is a cheap answer. And yeah, stuff like that. So
for that evil one, I feel like that one's really easy to explain.
Yeah.
Whether it be religion or not, it's just look at with every reaction, there's an opposite reaction to it, right?
Yeah.
That's the exact
Mhm.
same way. That goes along with your viewpoints. For your viewpoint, there's going to be someone else that has the opposite viewpoint.
Yeah.
And that's the exact same way with your morals.
Mhm.
You might have one moral, but someone else will have the exact opposite moral of that.
Mm-hmm.
There is someone out there in the world that is just your opposite.
Yeah.
And so that's what I feel explains the evil, I guess.
Yeah, they definitely said with the whole sin thing that it's because that like when a person does bad, it sins, and that's where the evil comes from, right? Like humans are built on sin and stuff like that. So that God's it's not like there's been points where like God's intervened. You have Jesus, stuff like that, the flood. But that's the argument for evil exists, definitely. But what was it? If you have any like points that you'd like to argue against Christians, go ahead.
Well, and I think, the hard part about arguing both of those terms is, a Christian's going to eventually get to the path of, well, it's just because God wanted, or why are we
Yeah.
questioning him? And a lot of their arguments are circle arguments by nature. And so it's really hard to have a logical discussion with a true believer that is trying to argue their point of view, right?
Yeah.
I think you accomplish a lot more with just an open discussion, because it's really hard. Because even an atheist arguing our standpoint, we're going to back it up with a tremendous amount of logic, facts, evidence, scientific studies.
Mhm.
But we're going to get to a point too where it's I don't know,
Yeah.
right? Like what happened before the Big Bang, I don't know.
Mother
Nobody does
Nature.
at this point. I'm guessing someday we will.
Yeah.
But so a lot of that is really hard to argue because um, one of the biggest arguments or the biggest tools that, let's just use Christianity, have is the Bible, and they always go to the Bible. For me, even if I believed in a God, I wouldn't believe in the Bible because the Bible has been retranslated, rewritten, added to, taken away from for so many years.
Yeah.
And so how can you and back to your comments about the morality. I mean, they claim that, I hear a lot that if you're an atheist, what keeps you from just going to murder somebody? Because you don't have morals. And my answer to that is, if your God is the only reason keeping you from going out and murdering somebody, then you might want to get some professional help, and I'm not sure I want to hang out with you anymore.
Yeah.
I think as humans, we have a natural desire to live, right? That's nature.
Of course.
I'm not talking about extremes here, right? Mentally ill, that kind of thing. But we have a desire to live, right? And we understand as humans, as animals, that we often do much better in packs and herds together as communities than we do alone. We also understand that if we want to live in those communities, those packs, those herds, there's certain things that we have to do to help each other and not harm each other. If we kill each other, then eventually we're not going to be here. And I think we understand that. I don't think it takes a God to get us to that point. And that, by the way, that's one of the other good questions that you can ask as an atheist. Start asking yourself is, do I need a God to accomplish this, or can I explain it without one? And you'll find that it's pretty easy to explain most things without it.
Yeah. That's exactly the argument for a Christian. For a Christian. That they brought up was, it's really easy to explain that there isn't a God, so that's their fallback in denial. But I heard of a really good idea that Christians came up with that it isn't like, oh, atheists are wrong, we're wrong, like this person's wrong. But instead of an open-minded understanding kind of situation, they're like, okay, I believe in God, you believe in something else, right? When something happens, like wind knocks over a tree, like lightning strikes a tree, that tree falls on the house, right? some Christian, not saying all, some Christian might argue, oh, that was God, that was sin, something along the lines of that. Not saying it might be, or they might just say, shit happens, right? But for a atheist or anyone who has a different point of view, they might say something along the lines of Mother Nature, right? That's like Big Bang, Mother Nature. They call it God, right? So what they said is, you believe in Mother Nature, we believe in God. What's not to say that Mother Nature isn't your idea of God, right?
Yeah, I see your point. Quick side note, even insurance companies will document on their paperwork that a tree fall in your house is an act of God. Isn't that funny?
Really?
Yeah. So to your point, though, I think one of the differences to that, and so for instance, a lot of Native American beliefs are that Mother Earth is a living spirit, right? And we're one with it.
Yeah.
I think it's actually a pretty cool belief. I think one of the big differences, though, is almost everything in Mother Nature, science can explain. Science has never been able to even begin to explain anything supernatural because you can't read it.
It's supernatural.
Yep.
Ooh.
And so when you're looking at those two beliefs, Mother Nature versus God, and is Mother Nature God? One, I can scientifically look at and understand how it works. The other one, I'm relying on a old rewritten book.
Yeah.
And people explaining to me what it is, right?
See, I've kind of mixed the views of a religion and science. As in, I feel like the Bible is a very kind of like fantasy-esque rewritten or writing of how the earth began. Because I feel like a lot of people will believe it to a T, this is what happened.
Yeah.
I feel that when I read it, I'm like, this is just kind of not a children's book way of explaining it, but more like fantasy in the esque of Adam and Eve.
Kind of like metaphorical.
More metaphorical in the sense that whenever God created the universe, that was the Big Bang.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Who's not to say that totally could have been what the Bible was? And some random person picked that up and goes, "Oh, this makes sense," right? Started a religion. We don't know. That was so long ago. But an
It's
interesting.
just one big practical joke that someone took a little too seriously.
Yeah. How do you decide if you're a Christian? How do you decide which part of the Bible's to believe and which you don't?
Oh, I've heard about this one. So basically they were just saying it's sacred text, and something. This is off of memory, and this was like months ago during summer or something like that. Summer, fall, one of those two. And they were saying that like, all of it is like, what was it called? First-hand experience. All of this is facts, and you might take like parts of the Bible and believe that yourself, but it happened. It was something along those lines. If it happened and you can take parts of it and believe it, but it's still that's what happened.
I have a hard time with like there are a lot of and once again, this is just people's beliefs, and I know we're talking about controversial subjects here, but parts of the Bible, for instance, right now one of the topics that's out there readily every day is about being homosexual. And there's a lot of Christians that are against it, think it's a sin, right? That passage in the Bible is not even clear if you read it. There's a lot of interpretation around what it means, and it's there's a really good chance it's not even talking about two men. But with that, they take that, right, and run with it. And yet there's actually multiple verses, almost an entire chapter in the Bible that describes not only can you own slaves, but it condones you to own slaves.
Yeah.
It gives you the instructions how to own slaves. It gives you the instructions on how to sell them if they're no good to you, how to keep them for life if you marry them off. And there's not one verse in the entire New Testament that abolishes slavery. Not one. And one of the arguments, there's a lot of them say, well, that was back then and it was different than it is now. And my argument is, well, slavery was never moral to begin
Yeah.
with. So one, but two, if it was an honest mistake and it was okay back then and it's not okay later, why wouldn't Jesus have mentioned it? Why wouldn't he have abolished it in the New Testament?
Exactly.
So there's right. So there's a lot of things on there that don't make sense. Why do they choose to believe one and not another?
Yeah.
I think at the end, yeah, right. I think at the end, it's the Bible is almost always interpreted in the way you want to live your life.
Not only that, but I personally have had an experience where I had to argue against some certain aspects of the Bible. And one thing that they had told me was that one day during the second coming of Christ, there will be a time where God will take everyone that believes in him, in his grace, and is forgiven, or has asked him to forgive them for their sins. They will go to heaven, and everyone else that doesn't will go to hell.
Mm-hmm.
My immediate response and argument against that was, so you're telling me even the people that haven't had the opportunity to even believe in this religion due to their other ethnic cultures, and the people that just cannot see it because there's been no physical evidence are just going to die? And they were like, well, you see, and then they had to clearly come up with something on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What was it? I had something in mind about that. I remember them arguing about something. Oh yeah. There's a lot of like shit happens, kind of like Christian points of view I saw where I had an exact point and I don't remember what it was. So it was the argument that atheists would make where what if someone just committed a homicide and last second truly believed that there is a God and asked for forgiveness, right? Does that mean everyone could just suck up to God right before death and just get into heaven, right? And they basically just said, yeah. I mean,
What? I've heard the exact opposite.
yeah, no, I heard, I was at the church camp and they said if they truly believe, then, and they change their ways, then yeah, shit happens.
No, that's not. Now, what is to say that you have to? That seems so fickle to me.
Yeah.
That seems so. What's the word I'm looking for? Skeptical, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Like in that case, you could lie your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Your whole life, and that's to say that God doesn't check your spiritual level in a sense, or your conscience. But if one day you just genuinely are just like, I'm gonna go Christian, and so you start praying every day, genuine praying, then it's like you could just literally, just like you said, kill as many people as you wanted, instantly turn around. It seems too.
Seems like
So
a
do you
flaw.
feel that do you feel like it can potentially have a reverse effect of teaching right the morals and the love of Jesus? Meaning, if I think I can get forgiveness and still go to heaven and everything's fine, then who's to say I can't just go out here and, like you said, kill someone?
Exactly. It seems that, and I feel like it's becoming a little less prevalent now, in the sense that when you were little, or if you ever did have religious parents or grandparents, they kind of forced it onto you.
Yeah, I saw that.
And it seems like that is still something that's prevalent to this day, and I feel like will never actually ever go away. But now it's getting to a point where people are like, if you believe it, that's fine, and if you don't, that's fine. Just give it a shot. Just hear us out, basically.
Interesting.
But I feel...
Sorry.
I feel they... No, you're good. I feel they really need to change the way they prove, or at least share the word of God.
Yeah.
Before it becomes exactly that. Something, for example, was a cult following. Heaven's Gate, I think it was what it was called.
Yeah, I heard of that.
You know exactly what I'm talking about. Heaven's Gate was a cult where people believed that if they followed certain rules and did certain things, they would be able to reach the Golden Gates. and it was one cult that would either kill people or get a bunch of people together to have a mass suicide, and they all followed through with it. That was a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting side note to your comment there. Both my parents were pastors.
Hmm.
I grew up a Christian, and in a Christian household. I was even one of my young paths that I was going to go on was to become a youth pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know if I ever truly I think when I was young I did, real young, but I don't know that I ever truly honestly believed in it.
Yeah, I've been that same way.
Same.
Yeah, and the older I got, I think it just, the more I was able to accept it and truly look at it and understand, like, okay, this really doesn't make sense.
I have a question. Did your parents ever ask or tell you that if you stopped believing, they would just basically disown you?
They never went that far. It would have upset them, but I don't think they would have gone that far.
I feel like that's one thing that gets a lot of people, and is why they're so. Invested's kind of the wrong word in that point of view, but I guess so driven into it because they have to be. They feel like
I
if
have
they
an argument
don't.
against that.
Oh, really?
It's less of a direct argument and more of a statement. Along the lines of like, well, a lot of people who are Christians and stuff like that are born into their religion. But you can grow up Christian and become an atheist, and it's the exact same way of you can grow up atheist and become Christian. It's not a counter argument or anything. It's just a straight up statement of you could see something could happen in your life. Maybe your life was saved or something where you saw God for a moment, and you're just like, huh. Now it makes sense. There's a lot of people who became Christian that way. And that was a statement I made, and I totally agree with that.
And there's nothing wrong with that either.
Yeah.
That's what you would call human right there. In the sense that you come through an experience that you can't explain but matches an ideal that you have.
Yeah.
And as soon as you get that ideal, and once you get through that experience and you start to, I guess, connect the dots, you're going to believe in that. And that's good. That proves that whatever you've been doing, you can finally say for yourself, maybe not others, but for yourself, that I have experienced whatever God is. And you can say that you truly believe in him.
Mm-hmm.
But not everyone's going to go through that.
There is a lot of people that do, though. My only problem with that, and not with what you said at all, you're spot on.
Yeah.
My only problem with that process is it goes back to the I don't know, right? So something happens in every single day in our lives, right? Something will happen that is odd. Could be pretty rare, right? And so, like you said, something happens in our life. We saw something amazing, whatever it was, a spirit, a ghost, we think it was, right?
Yeah.
And it changes. All of a sudden, this one person shows up and talks to us about God, and I was thinking about going to that church, and all of a sudden this happened, and all of these things kind of align. And rather than logically explain those things, because they literally happen to everyone every day all across the earth, we want to try to jump to that feel good reason, right? And all of a sudden now we've convinced ourselves, hey, maybe God is exist, and maybe I should become a Christian.
Yeah.
Sorry, you continue.
No, I was going to say fortune tellers use that all the time. They know that they could tell you 100 wrong things and 5 right things, and you're only going to remember the 5 right things because of how they do it.
Yeah.
And those 5 right things to you were so amazing that you feel like there's no way they could get there, and so you're going to believe in their ability. So it's hard to, I hear a lot of stories from people when I talk to them about their experiences. Like they claim that they saw a ghost and they believe that it was a spirit or an angel and Jesus sent him. And I'm like, so how did you get to that conclusion? If I saw something, if a ghost, and I'm only using ghost because it's a label, right, that we gave it. if Ghost came into this room right now and I saw it, I wouldn't think it was a supernatural thing at all. I wouldn't know what it was. I would be able to say, I don't know what that is, but it's cool.
Yeah.
And I would love to find out what it is. Hopefully someday maybe we'll have technology to figure it out, right? But
Mhm.
but it still doesn't get me to jump that gap and say, oh, it's got to be supernatural and it's got to be God.
Yeah,
Does that make
honestly.
sense?
Yeah, completely. Yeah, real fast, I did wanted to say, Pancake, thank you for typing in chat. Sorry, we've just been very invested in the conversation.
Yeah.
But kind of going with Pancake's idea of supernatural. Like, if you really want to chalk it up to anything, it's that it's just literally the word supernatural. It's something that we can't explain, but we will have our ideas and chalk ups of what we may think it can be, as so we have a grasp on reality. I feel that people will not jump to conclusions. Some people take years to dive into just one thought. And I
Yep.
feel like that's because they want to ground themselves into reality. There's a lot of people in this world that are able to understand that existence isn't forever and that nothing will last forever.
Mm.
But there are a lot of people that just do not want to take the grasp that the universe is infinite. Some people just do not like that idea. They
Yeah.
fear it.
It feels small.
Exactly. But if people have an idea that they say, I can run off of this, it gives them a reason to stay grounded instead of feeling, I would say, weightless in a sense.
Yeah.
You don't feel like you're floating aimlessly. It feels like you have a step that you can step on each time, and that you at least have some form of pressure being applied to you instead of nothing everywhere.
The feel good. What's
Yep.
it called? Dang, I have the word. The feel good argument.
Yeah,
I don't remember
Exactly.
the word. The
I
backup
know what you're talking
statement.
about though.
But yeah, along with what's Pancake saying, I want to read this one out loud because I've heard this one a lot from atheists, and I'm sure there's a lot of Christian arguments. But I just like to read this out loud as a statement that a lot of atheists have made, saying that there's many people who believe in Santa and the Easter Bunny is dumb when is ghost when they believe in ghosts, there's no like that's not proven to be real either, right? So when you believe in the supernatural, when you believe in a god or something, not saying that that's the same thing, it could be along the lines of saying, oh, I believe in Santa or the Easter Bunny, because since it's not directly proven to be real, it could be viewed as the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. One of the other arguments is I believe that hidden behind the moon is a community of pixies,
Yeah.
and those pixies control everything on the earth.
Yeah.
Proves it wrong.
Well,
you know?
I guess for a Christian argument for something like that would say we have the Bible. But again, I feel like we've talked enough on the Bible to really not have to go too deep into that one. Where I mean, there's a lot of arguments for atheists where they just say how the Bible doesn't make sense to them, and that's why they believe there isn't a God or there isn't some way that Christians say something. I do have one thing written down that I would like to ask. Same thing with the, what do you guys think of what atheist means to you? But what do you guys think evolution means to you?
Ooh. That I don't feel that it's just physical.
Yeah.
Evolution is not physical only. It is the regard of, and this is going back to just caveman brain thinking, where it is for our survival instinct. But now, due to us having things to keep us precautionary in the sense of protection and keeping us safe from danger and harm's way, we have things like guns, or we have knives, or cameras for our homes.
Yeah.
We have ways to protect ourselves in ways that we don't have to be 24/7 alert.
Yeah.
But instead, now we are moving towards the evolutionary standpoint of our minds. We are able to move towards thinking of our own paths that we understand are, things that could get us places. We have things where we can start thinking of new philosophies that explain the mortal coil that we, reside in.
School.
Yeah, schooling.
Yeah.
People have had so many different ideas and opinions on what they think should change. Beforehand, it was just do this, do this, do this. Now it's slowly but surely becoming think this, act on this.
That is true. Yeah, that is. I mean, I've stated on that before in previous podcasts, but I feel like that's a definitely different way to say it. But
I like that.
I've always said, and I don't know if you've heard this from me yet, Jeremy, but I've always viewed of when I don't know why a human does something, because I'm really interested in psychology, behavioral stuff like that. So when I see someone, I don't know, do something completely random, I'll think of an example when I'm halfway through it, but I always think back to survival instinct still, because I feel like that's still based on it. Like, why do we care about learning, right? But it's because we've already had a foundation, and so it gets to the point where now it's it leads back to, it helps us with survival in some sort of connection. But it's the small things now, like intelligence and stuff like that. Communication, why we talk to people. It brings us new ideas, and it might increase our chance for survival and bring our offspring better chances of survival. Maybe they can thrive now, since we already have food and water situated. Maybe they can focus on bigger ideas.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've stated that multiple times, but I definitely think you did that well, Storm.
Yeah, I like that response. For me, of course, you have the scientific explanation of evolution and what it is. For me, it really involves everything. And I think that it can be extremely fast. It can be extremely slow over millions of years,
Yeah.
but everything is evolving in a way, right? Um, there are so many good examples too. For instance, one of my favorites is there's a fox farm. They raise foxes, unfortunately for fur, and they actually did a study, and they took their meanest fox that they had, and they bred that fox with their second meanest fox, essentially.
Yeah.
And then they took the friendliest foxes they had, and they did the same thing. And they did not let the offspring breed with each other. They kept them separate, and they kept doing that. 3 generations is all it took. 3 generations of pups, and the mean ones were so mean that they couldn't even go to the cage to feed them. And the
Jeez.
nice ones were so nice that they were like little kittens. I mean, they just wanted to be with you so bad, and there was not an ounce of meanness in their entire body.
Yeah.
That to me is kind of a sped up way of looking at evolution, right?
Yeah.
Humans can impact evolution. Look at our dogs, right? Dogs all came from the wild wolf, but you put humans involved, and now we've got the stub-nosed pug that descended from the wolf, and that is all part of genetics changing. That is part of evolution. Um, the one part I don't necessarily buy into that a lot of people do, I think, is the survival of the fittest. I don't think that's a true statement. There are millions of species that are extinct now because they didn't evolve either correctly or fast enough. And I think that, right? And I think Mother Nature has a way of adapting animals. There's some truly amazing creatures out there. You look at like a stick bug, right? They blend in and look like a stick. It's amazing ability. So there are a lot of creatures that have been able to adapt amazingly to survive, and I'm not saying that it's not a part of it. I just don't think the survival of the fittest is necessarily a true statement.
I slightly disagree, only in the regards of humans and other assorted animals that are affected by humans.
Yeah.
Because other animals are still evolving. The most recent that I can really think of right now are moths. You had the white peppered moths and the black moths. They existed before, or white peppered moths existed before we really had big industries that were pumping out tons of toxic materials into our atmosphere, and so they blended in onto the trees because there were deposits that were black and white. But as more industry started to appear and started blowing other chemicals into the air, it killed whatever that stuff on the trees was. So they started to appear to their predators, and so they had to adapt in those trees.
Yeah.
But for humans, we've been the exact same for years. And the reason for that is we're apex predators. There has not been a need for us to change.
Yeah.
And the only reason things like dogs haven't evolved, or cats, to an extent, only through breeding have they evolved. The only reason they haven't is because they've also been protected.
Yeah. I'd like to clarify though. The moths didn't choose to become that certain color. What happened was, well, no, yeah, but what happened is that maybe like one of their offsprings had the wing color of black, right? And so eventually there starts to become where it's producing black moths, right? And now the white moths start dying, so the only thing that is left is the black moth.
Exactly, natural selection.
Yeah, so it didn't just go, oh, the white moth saw the black tree and chose to be black. That's not what happened. It's the white moths died and the black moth survived.
Yeah, I guess I should have gone into a little more detail on that, but either way, still same context. Thank you for elaborating on that one. But I don't know, like evolution is less prevalent, I feel, in the sense of an argument.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely prevalent, you know, when we were evolving to become humans. But now it's like we are just living lives.
Yeah.
Our RNA is not really going to be used as much as some people wish it would be, to get like 4 arms or gills to, you know, breathe underwater or something like that.
My only argument there would be I feel like we are evolving by an extreme amount, and there's many ways that you can, right? Not just growing another arm. If you actually look back, I mean, just a couple hundred years ago, if you can go find houses that were built in the early 1800s and actually look at their doors, their hallways, and their beds, they're tiny because humans have grown over the last couple hundred years. There's many arguments as to why, but I think that's just an example. Look at our the amount of intelligence we have now, right? You can argue that our brains have definitely evolved and have changed over the years, because I think,
oh yes, tremendously.
Yeah, I think you know, if you'd say like, well, but that's because of good schooling and us teaching the kids. I don't agree with that. I think if we could go back in time and grab a human from 1,000 years ago, bring them to today, I think they would struggle miserably.
Like trying to teach a monkey.
Yep.
And it works the exact way vice versa. Take someone from nowadays and bring them back 1,000 years. They're not gonna live.
Oh, right, exactly.
Like evolution has moved, like you said, from physical to mental. And to physical based when it comes to technologies and other worldly or other day-to-day things we use. For example, we've only known about gravity for like a couple hundred years. Like it wasn't known until Isaac Newton found it out and started to study it. Like gravity was discovered in 1687. Which, in the grand scheme of things, was not that long ago.
Yeah.
Right.
So, just that in general, the fact that we've been able to progress so far from gravity being invented to now is just insane. There has been no part of physical evolution. That has all just been mental and physical evolution.
Imagine what we'll know tomorrow.
Exactly.
That's a good quote.
Yeah, that is a very good quote. Wow.
I'd like to bring up that I have. It's really hard to argue with a Christian just because of the totally like the opposition to the views and just how they have grown up to learn things. But I actually got in a car with my family friends, and so I was talking to Jason's grandpa, his papa, and I asked him, And I said, it totally not go like I was not willing into going to an argument. I just wanted to have a discussion with the Christian man and see his point of view. So I asked, "What's your view on evolution?" Left it very broad, and he said, "I don't believe in it." So I elaborated, and I gave something along the lines of either like there's more than just physical, like there's mental evolution and stuff like or the Fox argument, right? And then it goes, "Oh, I see, I get it now," and like he got it at that point, right? And he said it, which basically means it's like Christians haven't seen that side yet. They haven't been presented that part of the evidence to believe in it. And same thing with atheists, is atheists haven't been presented the evidence that Christians have, and that's why they might not believe in certain things, right?
Yeah.
So he totally thought that evolution was an entire different thing. So that's why he didn't believe in it.
Well, yeah, that's what they're taught. The problem with the evolution argument for a Christian, looking at it from a Christian point of view, is if evolution does exist, which it does beyond a shadow of a doubt, but if they admit that it exists, it absolutely stops their argument for God creating us in its tracks. It doesn't hold up. It doesn't match. And they know that. And so they have to deem it as evil and science and not of God, not of the truth. And that's a hard argument. That's why it's hard to argue with them, right? Like Braden, you I think you did really good by explaining what it is. I mean, you guys both nailed it, and we just talked about what evolution is, and we see it every single day. We can actually witness evolution happening in our lifetime. Some of it's that fast, right? Like the fox analogy. But in order for them to truly believe that and admit that's what it is, then the argument about creation is extremely hard to argue.
Yeah. They have to see the other side first.
But not only that, but whenever they see that other side, you've just disproven their death.
Oh, that's big.
I feel like that's what a lot of it is, and I don't even think that they're thinking of it at that time. They just think that, oh, my religion is in stake at this one, but it's less of that and more like, you are telling me that I'm not gonna die how I think I'm gonna die.
Yeah. That's
so
deep.
it sends them into an instinctive sense of mortality that they just can't cope with.
Oof.
Yep.
Because it's something they've been taught for so many years, and something that they've believed their whole life that is now being disproved, and just they can't handle it, so they instantly have to argue against it.
It's an incredibly difficult thing to come to terms with yourself. That's something you were so passionate about your entire life may have been a lie.
Exactly.
Yeah. I know there is, and I've seen like Christian scientists, right? Not to say that not like all Christians don't believe in science, but like I want to talk to one that believes in science and is willing to give their standpoints, and one that is also like, you know, not the totally opposing side, like more of an agnostic theist, right? I'd want to meet one of those, and we need to do like a part 2. Because it's really hard to find one of those people. That's why I brought Jeremy on the podcast, because I know he's like talked with people, talked with Christians, talked with atheists, gathered all these points of views, and done his research. So I'd assume he had pretty good points that we can clarify, and me like going to church camp and bringing up arguments just makes it a little bit more interesting.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here. This is fun.
Yeah.
To your point, I agree. I have talked to several scientists that are also Christian. And I think at the end of the day, though, it's they do a lot of the same things that other Christians do, in that if science explains it away or explains it wrong, or I should say controversial,
Yeah.
they just choose not to believe in that, or they choose not to look at that. The same way there's parts of the Bible that we believe in and we don't believe in, right? If we're a Christian, they they can explain those things. They have great explanations of it. It's really actually really interesting to listen to them talk about it. But they are really good too at saying I don't know.
Yeah, I
Better
totally
than
agree.
better than most, I would say.
Yeah. I feel like I know what another part of it is. Is like they believe, or Christians, whenever they are having to argue for the religion, I feel that they believe it because it's written in a book.
Yeah.
But the opposite to that is they will argue against science because it's just a hypothesis, it's a theory.
I've heard that one
Yet
before.
the whole Bible is a theory.
Gravity's a
It does,
theory.
yeah. It never officially says that it's a theory in the Bible, because then it's just, contradictive. But when you look at them, they're both thoughts and ideas on what's gonna happen, or what did happen.
Yeah. And I feel like maybe the biggest part of why it's hard to, like, Christians and atheists it's hard to create a valid argument where they both understand each other is because it's easy to be an atheist from a Christian point of view, because they think that being an atheist is in the denial of God. That's their point of view, right?
Mhm.
So when you bring all of those things, they're like, oh, you're just in denial, you haven't seen it yet. And same thing with an atheist, oh, you're just in denial, you haven't seen science yet. It also ties back to the same argument of atheists do believe in a God and it's science, Mother Nature, stuff like that, right? And I'm sure there's some, like, atheists out there who do believe that. Maybe.
I hear a lot of to them saying that I must be mad at God. God did something to make me mad. So I became an atheist.
Ooh. That's...
Yeah, I've heard that one too.
I haven't. Why? That just doesn't make sense to me.
And that's exactly what I've said. I've said that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
If I don't believe in him, then how am I gonna say that he did something bad?
Yeah. What?
But
Right? Exactly.
the same thing goes to them. I'm like, how do you believe in God? And they go, I just do. I'm like, do you have any physical evidence? They go, no. And I go, then how do you have evidence? And they go, spiritual.
Now that's called denial. That's what that is. Is you believe that there is a God, but you're just mad at him. That's denial.
No, Pancake, I kind of disagree. Religion makes sense. And that it only makes sense to the eye of the beholder. For example, for me, religion makes sense because it's it allows for you not to fear death as much. It gives you a reason not to die, but it makes death just a little bit less scary. Because no one wants to think that when they die, they just see black for the rest of their life. Because no one knows what happens to a consciousness. Because whenever you go, for certain studies, whenever you go into a coma, it's just like one big dream. What is to say when your brain and your heart stops thinking, or when your head starts thinking, stops, and your heart stops beating? What happens then? If souls exist, how do the soul? Where does that go? Does it wander?
Exactly. What is a soul?
I don't know.
Here is a totally wacky argument for a Christian. So if you say you go to heaven, right? And you like when you come from earth to heaven, and you die, do you still have that same consciousness? Like, do you still like remember everything you believed when you were on earth? Because if so, what happens when you get dementia? Because you die and you forget completely everything, right? So at that point, or when you're brain dead, right? At that point, when you die, you have practically no conscious. Does all your memory just flood in when you go to heaven? Is that what happens?
I've heard that from my grandmother. She said whenever you go to heaven, you will never ever feel sadness. You will never feel hunger. You will never feel anxious. You will only feel happy, and you will feel relieved.
Terrible.
That
what
sounds
a boring place.
That's what I'm thinking.
No, that sounds like hell for me.
Yeah, who wants to live a life where you do not feel anything but happiness?
No one has an opposing view in heaven? Is that why it's so secluded? It makes it
Talk
work.
about a cult.
That is why I've never brought that up, because of just how controversial that is.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to get controversial when it comes to that, say that religion's a cult, or that Christianity's a cult.
What is the
It-
definition of a cult?
I can Google that, because I want to say what I think it is. It is a following that you are willing to go through to death. Let me Google it to see if I'm right or if I'm wrong.
I know a lot of Christians that would fit that definition.
I know a lot of them too.
I know some atheists who'd fit that definition.
A system of religions, variation, and devotion directly toward a particular figure or object.
Well, that's just called religion, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's everybody.
A relatively small group of people having religious beliefs or practices regarded by another or others as strange or sinister.
That's the defining trait.
Yep.
This small group that is defined as strange, that's what a cult is.
Mm-hmm. A misplaced or excessive immoderation or admiration, whenever you admire something
Yeah.
for a particular person or thing.
Admiration.
Admire, thank you.
There you go. Like the Bible or Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I feel like the only reason why that's not defined under a cult is because it's a lot of people. That's terrifying. That's the only reason why religion, like Christianity, Buddhism, anything like that, isn't defined as a cult. Because it's a lot of people.
No, you know what is a cult though?
What?
The niche group, the small group that will do taboo things to get what they want.
Yeah.
Whether that be, the best example is the Heaven's Gate cult, or I think that's what it's called. I said it earlier.
Yeah, that's it.
They literally had a mass suicide as a way to get into heaven, and it was a small group. It just had a lot of followers that would believe that, oh, if you die instantly, you can go to heaven.
Yeah.
If you would like to Google it, please suggest, because I might even be wrong. I did a little bit of research on it, but it was a while back.
No, I think you're right. Would that same philosophy hold true for harm to others? So you don't agree with my religion, we're going to then kill you.
Yeah, that's the cult following of it. It's just like the satanic Satanist, and I don't mean that every Satanist is satanic, because
like,
whenever you do the little bit of research that I've done on Satanism is it's not cult-y. It's more self-evaluation based, which I feel like is just existence with extra steps.
just a terrible name.
Yeah.
The more research you do, and trust me, I'm not condoning it in any way, but in today's world, Satanists are way more Christian-like than Christians.
That's exactly what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
No harm, they don't fight. It's an interesting thing to look at. Another great question I love is how do you know God's the good one?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Oh,
And that's what a lot of people have thought as well.
You know what you should watch is
What?
Mandela's Catalog. That's what Jeremy should watch.
Yes.
Oh.
Okay, really fast. I want to say something, and then you can say something, Zenith.
Yeah.
But Jeremy, the Mandela's Catalog is so incredibly interesting. It basically puts in the point of view where what God is doing is taking non-believers and just killing them by sending to them basically another them.
Yeah,
that might have it. They're called alternates. They are literally just you, or they will have dismembered figures of them. I think they're supposed to be angels sent down from heaven that copy you.
Mm-hmm.
They use psychological warfare as a way to kill you.
They make you off yourself.
Either that, or they just straight up kill you.
Interesting. I'll check it out.
Yeah.
I will warn you, it's a horror. It's analog horror, and there's stuff like ASMR, like whispering in your ear, disturbing images, a little bit of jump scares here and there, but it's, if you don't
It's
know what
nothing
analog
like shock
horror is,
horror.
it's like VHS horror.
I
Yeah.
love horror.
Okay, yeah.
But it's scary.
So
We love horror movies.
I-
Yeah.
But
I'll DM
it's-
it, or
it's-
I'll text it to you, the name.
It's
Okay.
less
Sounds
horror.
good.
It's less horror and more terror. It
Yeah,
sends that.
dread.
It sends that. Yeah,
Mm.
terror and dread feel instead of it being like shock horror or jump scares.
Interesting. I'll check it out.
Yeah, the Mandela catalog deals a lot in the regard of you don't believe in me, you're dead.
Yeah. Right. So back to how do they know God's the good one?
I mean, according to the Old Testament, it doesn't really seem that way.
Yeah.
What's interesting is Satan killed no one in the Bible, but God's
He's-
killed millions.
And yet Satan doesn't kill people. It's the people that kill people.
It's interesting. Another weird one for me to think about is like one of the best children's stories of all time in Sunday school was Noah's Ark, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I had the little books, I had a Noah's Ark playset. But if you think about that logically as an adult, if that story is really true, let's assume it did happen, that would literally be the largest genocide the world has ever seen.
Yeah.
Or hasn't seen, honestly.
Or hasn't seen, right? Exactly. And we teach that to our kids in a Sunday school with little cartoon figures. That's
Oh.
kind of sadistic, if you ask me. I mean, that's like sad.
Why, if God can create all of this, why didn't he just wipe the earth? Or better yet, give up on it, let it do its thing, and create a new one?
Well, you're right. And God doesn't fail, right? But clearly, if Noah's Ark was true, that he failed because that was his attempt to wipe all the evil off the face of the earth because he didn't
Yeah.
like what was happening. And it clearly returned. So is that a failure?
Not only that, but going back to the second coming of Christ. If the Bible is true, if my grandmother is correct in this regard, then I didn't mean to say my grandmother, but yeah, that was who I had the argument with. If she's right, then millions, most likely billions of people are going to die.
Mhm.
Billions of people.
Yeah, it's
And
only a
spend
handful.
eternity in hell.
Eternity, like that's worse than death.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think I'd rather die. I have the more I think about death now as an atheist and knowing that there is nothing, it actually has been very comforting for me.
Mhm.
It's made me realize that I truly only have this one life to live. I'm going to do everything I possibly can to make it the most amazing life ever. Because I know there's nothing else.
Exactly. Jinx. Like, I always tell people if they are ever having any bad thoughts about their own life and what to do with it, or if they're having any negative thoughts on the existence in general, I tell them don't look for look for something to do, but don't do it for someone else.
Yeah.
Do it for yourself. If doing something for someone else is making you unwell or unhappy, using that time to do something for you, like have a project or a hobby, it's the best thing you can do. It's the most freeing thing you can do. You aren't bound to a certain person. You are bound to you. You are bound by what you are willing to bound yourself to. But don't bound yourself to someone else.
I like that.
Yeah.
I've totally, and it helps sometimes. It depends on how willing or open-minded the person is, because if someone's going through a rough time and they seek for help, I can definitely help them. But if they're going for a rough time and don't want help, there's only so much I can do.
There's nothing you can do in that
Yeah.
regard. You can help them get out of that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you throw everything you got into that pit that they're in, and they don't take it or they can't use it, that pit's too deep for
Yeah.
you to help. they need to excavate themselves from that hole.
That's why I always like saying, and I tell everybody the same thing. You don't know how you got there. You don't know how it's gonna end. So fuck it. You don't want to get to the end of this and be disappointed that you ended it short, or that you could have done more, or worse, like you could see the life you could have had and you're now sad that you didn't have it, right? So just don't do that. You're gonna if you're gonna die anyway, you might as well just live your life. Even if you're miserable the whole time, it won't matter in the end anyway, right? At least live your life.
Try something.
Try something.
Yep. Try something new.
Exactly. Eat a new food.
Oh, absolutely.
Ride a bike.
I had a
don't
hot
know.
pocket. Never had that before.
Go climb a tree. If you've never done that, which I've never done that, I want to do it though. Build a tree house. Go spend time with your friends and family. Even if you do believe in religion, you are going to die. Everyone around you is going to die. It's extremely dark and morbid, and some people would say edgy, but that is reality. And so the only thing and the best thing you can do with the limited amount of time you have on this earth, religion or not, you are not immortal. No one is. So go and spend that time with the mortal people you have around you and enjoy it. Make the memories you can now, because you never know if you'll never be able to ever again.
That's, I feel,
I like
one thing Christians and atheists can both agree on. From an atheist point of view, like, we've already stated it, but for a Christian, I've heard from them saying, hey, like, even though you're gonna get into heaven, you're only gonna live on this earth once. Please do your best, and don't, in that, like, it's just an agreeable thing that I've heard from atheists as well. Don't spend your whole life, like, doing this and this for God. Do it for yourself as well.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah, I like that.
if you want to aim it towards the people that do believe in religion, and you want to make it religious, say that God has given you a life for you to live and make memories for.
Exactly.
Whatever that may be, we don't know, but he gave you a life that he wanted you to have.
I should read that quote now.
He doesn't want you to live his life. He wants you to live your life.
Did you just... That was the end of my quote that I deleted.
Wait, was it really?
Yeah, I said like, I said it was worse, and like, I couldn't think of a way to word it. It was something along the lines of like, live your life, not like the life that was made out to be. And that was exactly what I was meaning to say, was live your life, not God's life, right? But I'll go ahead and read that quote now.
Yeah, go ahead and do that.
Yeah, so here, I'm gonna have to minus out of this. But basically, right after I got from church camp, my brain was just absolutely hurting because I had to argue both Christians and atheists and all these counter arguments for both sides going into 20 layers deep, right? So I was like, I might as well get everything out of my brain and take like a 24-hour nap, right? Let me go into a coma real quick.
Yes, that's a nap.
So I'm just gonna read this out and we can take our own interpretations of it. But it basically wrote, with all the complexity and misinformation to solve in our short lives, I feel as if there is a God out there that has created us in our vision. If there is a God out there who has created us in our vision, he didn't create humans for the sole purpose of worship and study. I feel that God has created us to live out our lives, to thrive as a society. It's understandable and respectable to worship God and Christ for what they have done for us, and it's understandable and respectable to want to have a healthy relationship with your Creator. The bottom line is that there's so much that we don't understand about God and or this world that it isn't worth trying to spend your whole entire life studying it. It's simply not possible with the time one individual has to understand the world/God within their lifespan. Reach your full potential. Understand the world's improvement and not all of its function. and let the next generation pick up the knowledge that you have left to further extend it. With this uncertainty of the world, religious or not, make God a part of your life and not your life. Accept that you can't understand all of it and find the middle line. Don't reject the idea that there is a God, but that doesn't mean that you have to be certain that there is a God.
Live your life, not his life.
There you go.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that I just used that last little bit of the
That was
quote.
the last part of the quote, yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
I just wanted to add that in because it's still prevalent.
I would add one more to it. Live your life, not his life, and let others live their life, not how you think they should live.
Yes. Preach! Preach!
That's the whole, and I know this is a controversial subject and show, which I'm having a lot of fun with. But at the end of the day, I know a lot of amazing people that are Christians. It's nothing bad, nothing wrong. Yeah, there's been a lot of bad things happen over the centuries, but one can argue that, man, there are a lot of great churches out there that do a fantastic job for the community. And I think that's what a lot of people just seek, right? That friendship, that brotherhood, that sisterhood,
More
a place they
Catholic?
can go. Yeah, a place they can go where they know everybody thinks similar to them, especially in such a divided nation and world we have in today's world. But so I think there is a lot of good there. I think the problem comes when they cross over that line and feel that everybody should believe that way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree. And that's why I was looking into like Catholics. And like I said to myself, kind of like, if I ever want to become a Christian, I might consider being Catholic, honestly. Because it's on the set idea of like questioning aside, like you guys all believe in the same thing, and you can go in there and with brotherhood and sisterhood all be a part of this huge family of God, right? It totally makes sense. So that's why I totally agree with Catholicism. Catholics.
The Catholic belief.
The Catholic belief, yeah.
Catholicism.
Catholicism. That is that's it. It sounds right, and I know it is, but where did that come from? Like Catholic
Too big of a word for
Catholicism?
me.
Yeah.
The Catholic Church in itself, though, has done a lot of harm.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. It's changed so many laws and regulations across the world, and it's controlled so many people's lives. Now, I'm not saying it hasn't done good either, right? It's done a lot of good too. But that's a difficult one for me.
That is
I just
true.
feel like the world shouldn't be driven on religion.
I forgot about that, but I feel like it's different
agree.
nowadays.
Like
I agree.
I do feel though, with more people becoming agnostic and more people becoming or having the thought process that we do, because we're just three people. We're just three
kids as
people
well.
yeah, 2 kids and 1 adult having a conversation about religion. That we've only and yeah, you're an adult, but you haven't died. You haven't lived everything.
Right.
So even with this short lifespan that we've already lived, of 15 to 14 and then beyond, we still, I would say, have a pretty well set opinion on life and existence. That
Well,
I
you guys
feel.
are
What?
you guys are so much farther ahead than when I was that age. Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. One thing about the older I get, the more I realize I don't know.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, that's the same with me. But I've gotten to a point where I accept that, and the fact that I will never know everything. Now, I will be slightly egotistical and say, "Oh, I know everything," jokingly, just so that way I have a stepping stone for me to continue to want to learn multiple things, as many things as I can. I don't use my ego as a way to boast and brag. I use it as a way for me to continue life, being able to say, someday I know this, and know it well. That's why I, quote unquote, am egotistical.
Yeah.
It's just that I have a well-rounded ego that I know is used for not to brag to people and make them feel beneath me, but more for me to be able to better myself and be able to give other people more knowledge.
I want to reword that. So me and Storm, if like, I'm sure you probably don't know this because you don't talk with us every day, but we constantly joke around how we're egotistical because like we think about ourselves a lot and it's kind of funny. But we've actually like came to the realization one day, it's like, oh shoot, that's called having a healthy mindset. When
Yeah.
when you regulate your emotions and you are able to think about these things, it's called having a healthy mindset. And it's so crazy because nowadays you don't see much of that, at least for our age group. It's hard to see a lot of that. But what was I saying? It's not necessarily an ego thing, but I feel like it's more of you have a healthy mindset and that's what you use it for. Because ego is used in a more negative term. So
Yeah, I like that. You're not satisfied with the status quo.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
You know, Casey, my daughter, one of the best examples. Carrie and I, the entire time she was growing up, Carrie and I, if we had used the old parent excuse on her and said, because daddy said so, or because mommy said so, oh, that made her so mad. Because if we told her no, she had to understand why. And that was
smart.
Yeah, and that's a brilliant thing in her, and we raised her to be very independent that way, to think for herself. So I love what you guys are saying. You don't want to. The status quo is just that. It's boring. What else is out there?
Mm-hmm. There's no
It's
point in
amazing.
living life with just the limited knowledge you have and saying, all right, I know enough.
yeah,
Live your life wanting to extend that and give other people that little bit that you know.
don't try too hard though.
Yeah, well, yeah. But I mean, that's the whole reason we have offspring. It's the whole reason we have kids.
Yeah.
And so that way we can pass along our knowledge, which, by the way, I'm going to feel so bad for my child. Because, like, my dad did the exact same thing to me, where we would just talk for hours. It's why I love doing a podcast now. We would literally just talk, and he would lecture. And it wasn't anything bad. It was good. I loved listening to him talk. But now I already know that when I have a kid, we're going to be sitting in the car going to, like,
no,
wherever
you're gonna
we
be
are.
like my dad, dude.
And we are just going to talk for hours. No, it's just going to be me talking to them.
Yeah.
I will have my own podcast, but
That's-
it's just me with my kid just being like, "Shut up."
That's all like that. Like my dad talks about golf, and like me
I
myself.
was gonna say golf.
Yeah, I'm not like too interested in it. Not saying like, oh, shut up, because that's like obviously I'm interested, but I don't know as much about golf as he does. Right? So hearing him talk about that, it's kind of like the same perspective, but I feel like for your child, it's going to be a little bit worse, Storm, because you're interested in cars and
No.
I feel like for your kid, it's going to be like 10 times more boring.
No. I'm not just going to talk about cars. I want.
Are you sure?
Yes, I promise. And I don't promise a lot.
Never
No.
heard you talk about anything else.
Here is here's what I'm happy about, and here's how I know I'm living a good life so far, is that before I would sit and listen to my dad. Now I talk to him. I don't just sit, like, I'll sit through and listen to what he has to say, but then he listens to me.
That's big.
Yeah,
That is big.
he listens to my lectures that I'll give, because I've gotten to a point where my thoughts have branched off from his. I've had different points of views. So now I get to give him a different perspective that he doesn't have. And so then he can go, huh, yeah. Or we will agree, but we will also have different opinions while agreeing. So then we just are able to add onto each other's opinions and knowledge. That's what I want my child to do. I want him or her to be able to talk to me. Give me new ideas and opinions. Don't belittle your child. And this is coming from a person that does not have a child. Don't treat them as just,
A child.
something that, don't treat them as a child. Treat them as a growing human.
You are absolutely spot on in my opinion.
Thank
That
you.
is exactly how we raised Casey. That is exactly how Carrie's parents raised her. Um, I would say, and Dylan, I would say
Mhm.
for the most part, um, my parents did a pretty good job of that. The religion piece was there, and so there was a lot of tell do with that piece. Um, but other than that, my parents, they didn't explain a lot to me. They kept things hidden, like a lot of parents do. So
Yeah.
I
Of
wish they
course.
would have talked to me more when I was younger about life. I figured out life from my friends and other friends' parents. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think you're spot on. That's really good stuff.
I've done
And
both, and I'm still doing both. Oh,
yeah.
sorry, you go. I'll add on later.
That the fact that your parents were in a totally opposing like religious view from you honestly might have helped you learn more. And specifically like with your thought process and how your thought process grew up like that, the fact that you're questioning you were able to learn more about it. You were able to make arguments when you were younger that made sense to you, or when you were older looking back at it, right? So and it's different for everybody, but the fact that you turned out that way, I'd say that is one of the main reasons that you did, is because of the fact that your parents were religious.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I think about it now. I'm actually glad. I know a few people that were atheists their whole lives, um, and I'm actually thankful for my religious upbringing because number one, like we talked about, I've actually was part of the children's group in a Mormon church for a couple years. I was
Mhm.
part of a children's group in a Baptist church for a couple years. Got to do some amazing things with them, and learned a lot, met a lot of amazing people. But I think that it's helped me now being an atheist because I do know the Bible front and back. I do know it. I lived it. I was there. Um, and
But
I
you're
think
able to
that,
construct your own opinion.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Really good stuff.
Oh, like this, I don't know about you, and I say this a lot that this is my favorite
This is
podcast, but
definitely
this
my
one,
favorite podcast.
yeah, this one, I feel like we can all unanimously agree is our favorite podcast.
I
Like,
love it.
I'm going to be definitely like my parents don't usually watch the podcast, mainly because they don't listen to too many podcasts. But this one, I'm definitely suggesting to them.
I should suggest this to the whole family. My mom listens to
Yeah,
the podcast though.
because if I'm being honest,
Cool.
like I've always, and I feel like this was also brought up as a kind of like a stigma for any teenager. They never feel like, or in the most angsty way, like they don't get me. My parents don't get me. Oh, but I mean that literally now. Like it feels like you can't be a child and have a quote unquote mature standpoint on life. You're a child. Like that's what I don't like.
I
I'm not
agree.
saying I want to be treated as an adult when I'm not. Treat me like
Yeah.
a child, but don't treat me like a child. Treat me like a
your
human.
child.
Yeah.
Explain to me why you don't want me to do that.
Yeah.
Let me know. Give me the reasons why.
The reasons why is just because it always made me feel as if I couldn't talk to them. Like it made me feel that if I was not able to, if I thought I had a really thought-provoking idea, I couldn't tell them because they were just gonna be like, oh, that's just a stupid child thing, go away.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like don't raise me like a child, please do, and I'm very thankful that my parents have raised me like a child because it allowed me to live a innocent and pure life, but then I was also able to grow out of that in a healthy way and not in an unhealthy way.
Yeah.
I feel like I gained a maturity slowly, like I should have as you grow up, but also they let me learn to have my own opinion.
I think you matured a little bit faster, Storm.
But and my parents, like they know this, like they what I'm saying is they don't not do this. Like they've always told me that you can tell us anything,
Yeah.
and that and if you have any ideas or opinions or just any concerns, please bring it up with me or us. And I've always lived by that. But because of society, I haven't wanted to talk to my parents like this because I feel that if I do, they're just gonna be like, oh, you're a child, you have a child mindset, go away. Your opinion isn't an adult standpoint.
Yeah.
as if like you have to unlock a level to be able to have a mature standpoint.
So I want to say something that's interesting and that I've thought of before, but actually, Uncle Jeremy and my aunt as well, he went up to me, and he went up to me and my sister, and he said that like if you ever go out, this was for safety reasons first, like if you ever go out partying or you end up in the wrong place, maybe you end up somehow getting drunk or something, and you don't feel comfortable. Yeah, and you don't feel comfortable calling your parents, call us first. First, for one, safety concerns, and for two, it's like that's kind of what a parental figure needs to know so they can learn from it. But being your parents, the first thing that they're gonna do is yell at you, no matter who they are. It's just, I don't know. It's your parents, right? It's awkward. That's how that is. But if it's like your aunt and your uncle, it's going to be a little bit different of a relationship, and you can possibly learn from that more. And I really like that offer.
Oh, real fast, let me just state that like I don't really rebel on my parents at all. I love my parents so much, and I'm so thankful that I've had the life that I've had to live. If that's what you were thinking, no. I am so thankful. As in, I give my parents as much respect as I can.
Yeah, same.
Like
that
I
was
have
the accent thing I was talking about earlier.
I love my parents to death. I would literally be willing to do anything. That goes for all of my family, really. But like, I am so thankful, because without them, I wouldn't be thinking how I am to this day. Like, genuinely, I would literally give my life for my parents and family, if I had to. If I could, I would, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, and I'm going to live by that for the rest of my life. I'm so incredibly thankful. It's just, I like, even though they allow me to speak my mind, I just feel that society has made it to where I can't.
Now,
Because I'm a child.
I would like to tie this back to the topic at hand, because I feel like we went a little off. But yeah, speaking of family and religions, we did talk about earlier about being raised as a Christians and the differences between that. But acceptance is also a big part of religious families. Is because sometimes when you do something like that, it might be a totally different situation if your parents were atheists, Christians, an agnostic theist, or an agnostic atheist, right? All of those might end in totally different situations just because of their religious standpoint. And that could inflict you heavily as a child. There's been a lot of traumatic cases where it ended in certain ways, and it's just wow.
Yeah.
Not saying that Christians, like, religion is the only reason why children get trauma. It's just saying that it's interesting that it could end up in a totally different standpoint due to their religion.
Oh, absolutely. And in so many different ways. Imagine. Oh, Alexa just spoke up and thought I was talking to her. Imagine growing up in an extremely religious house, being a young gay boy or girl.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, wow.
Talk about you can tell us anything.
Yeah. I'm with you, Storm. I'm so lucky to be who I am and how I was raised and where I'm at, and then especially Carrie's family. But I couldn't imagine if I did grow up gay, coming out in that environment, knowing that what it could cause.
Exactly.
And that's just the direct stem of religion for me. I mean, it's love's love, period.
Exactly.
I guess that goes back to our discussion about believe how you want to believe, but don't put it on others, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was one of the first reasons, or like the first experiences that I had with my parents, where I was like, I know I can tell them anything. It's because one, both of my parents are agnostic as well. Actually, yeah. But they've also told me many a times that if you ever come out gay, or if you ever feel that you want to tell us that you have a different sexuality or anything like that, please tell us. We would like to know. We are not going to judge you. We are never going to judge you for that. And the same with my sister. but they said the reasons why we feel bad if you do is because we don't want my parents, they don't want my grandparents to freak out because they're very religious. My grandparents are very religious.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've never wanted us to hide it from them, from my parents, but they've definitely said just tell us first. Because it could be very interesting, I guess, to say the least, to tell my grandparents.
Yeah, I bet.
Ooh.
But I mean, for as long as I know, or for me at least, I'm a straight male, maybe bisexual. Either way, I have no idea. Haven't lived life long enough to say yay or nay.
I just like to point out that my grandpa is now in the chat, and it's sometimes funny. Oh, my family is watching, but again, he's one of those people in my family who has kind of this, not necessarily in religious, but like open-minded points of view. So I'd find it like really interesting for him to be watching. I'd wonder what he thinks.
Yeah,
He would be a great future special guest to you guys.
Oh yeah, I thought about that.
I would just like to say thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
Genuinely.
Awesome. It's been so much fun.
Yeah.
Yes, it has.
It's so cool. Earlier, I was reminded of one of my favorite quotes, though. I have to share it with you.
Please do.
And I got to give credit where credit's due again. So it's another Matt Dillahunty quote. But I want to go through life believing as many true things as possible and not believing as many false things as possible.
Yes.
A skeptic mind.
That's one thing you should be taught when you're Christian too. Be skeptical. That is either A, it'll make up your mind on whether you want to be Christian or not, but B, if you are Christian, it brings you closer to God.
Yeah.
Braden, you're spot on, Braden. And that's the problem with religion. Not picking on Christianity, but almost all of them.
Mm-hmm.
They don't teach that. They teach that their way is the right way and the only way. And if you even go outside of that to do research on your own, that's you doubting God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of the fundamental differences. That's one of the questions I always ask someone if I'm in a religious discussion with them and they're Christian is there anything you could possibly think of that would get you to not believe in a God? And their answer is always no, absolutely not. And I then explained, if I saw enough evidence, I don't know what that is, but if I did, I would change my mind and believe in a God.
Definitely.
That's the difference. I'll change my mind if there's enough evidence.
I think what it is
Others won't.
Is they're running off of, and this is probably going to be pretty controversial, is that religion is kind of the opposite of evolution. In the sense of mental evolution. If you are going to hold yourself back from anything but that, you cannot learn. Which is why, for using this, whenever you were talking about how, what was it, your friend's dad? Or your grandpa? That, you told about evolution.
Oh, yeah, it was my friend's grandpa.
Yeah. So, exactly. He had no sense, or no thought of him, or evolution ever existing. Because he had been in one spot his whole life and never broke free for skepticism, for theories, for philosophy. There was nothing there. I feel like they run off of the thought of curiosity killed the cat.
Yeah.
If you think, you could die. Don't think.
That's crazy. I would like to clarify that we're not categorizing religion as like the branches of Christianity. That's just what I think we can all agree that we grew up with. I don't know about you, Storm, but like we grew up in a church. So
I almost did.
Yeah. So like basically that is the only thing we've been taught, like religious wise. Anything outside of that would have had to been through research, which just isn't as strong. It's secondhand. So,
And I'm kind of quite thankful for this, because you both have been raised in a church, so I get a new perspective on religion, while I was lived in a religious family, but not strictly in the church.
yeah.
So I had the ideals from my family, but not by the church. I wasn't old enough to really pay attention and to take the word for it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the experiences of going and the occasional things here and there, but rather than that, most of it was just from my family and then from doing my own internet research and friends.
It's kind of crazy. Back to the idea of the, like, all people who believe in God will go to heaven. There has to be, someone has to agree, like some Christian has to believe that there are some people, or for any religion really, there has to be some people in that religion who might just get it wrong, who maybe didn't understand it the same way you did, which by the way is kind of terrible that that's an issue.
Happen.
That, yeah, like, but does that person go to heaven? Like, what if they identify as Christian, but they got some aspects of God wrong, and they're like, but like, how far is the extent that they don't get accepted? Is putting that label on themselves in like an immediate gateway?
Another example, I guess, is being gay and Christian, or
Yeah.
being any other,
Right.
or having any other sexuality and Christian at the same time.
That's a different
Like
view.
you're still following the religion. You just choose to have a different sexuality.
So are those
That's
people
what-
included?
That's one of the fundamental problems with it, right? You would think if there was one God, and let's just remove religion for a second, right? If there was one God, you would think that there would be more unity across the world in the belief structure,
Mm-hmm.
right? But even within Christianity, there's literally thousands of different beliefs, and many of them are such at odds with each other that they condemn the other within
Yeah.
Christianity. And then you go outside that and you go to Mormonism, and you go to,
Catholicism.
Buddha and the Muslim faith.
Yeah.
And these religions, there's literally thousands of them across the face of the planet, and they're all in such contradiction with each other to the point that they're willing to go to war. How does one step back and be confident that you have the right one, if there is a right one?
Which one would get accepted?
Right. Which
Yeah.
one, if there is a heaven, then which one gets me there? Is it where I was born?
I have an interesting idea. If there is a God, and he made any of these scriptures, why would you allow people to believe that you exist? What benefit is that? Is it so they can be rid of evil? Is that it? Because as far as I'm concerned, if you allow people to believe in that and they worship you, that might take away from their life.
I feel like that takes away from their freedom as well.
Yeah.
No, it's not that I think it's that it does. Think about the norms that are of today, and a great example of this is through sexuality, being gay, bisexual, anything like that. You are taking away the freedom that you have given them. God is just taking away the one thing you were created for,
Here's an
to
extreme
exist.
So the fact that God allowed people to know that he exists, that allows hell to exist. Because now that you know there is a wrong, then you're like, that differs people from going to heaven and hell. The right from wrong, the fact that they have a choice, right? If they didn't have a choice, then like, it'd be a little bit different.
Yeah.
I would take it back one more step. If there is a God, did he allow us to know he exists, or do we even know he exists?
Or there's
Ooh.
Whoa.
I've never been in a situation where I'm the one contemplating life in this regard, because it's usually me making Zenith feel like that.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Speaking of Jesus,
Yeah, literally.
in specifics, that's a way for like maybe Christianity. Yeah, you could say, oh, the Son of God came down to Earth, and he says, hey, I'm here, right? And the angels and stuff like that. But who's, again, like, there might be a God out there, and what if all of their religions are wrong? They might just be a misinterpretation, but again, that goes back to the argument of like, which one goes to heaven? What if all of them are wrong? Then none of them go to heaven. Is there? Does that even mean there is a heaven? There might be a God, but there not be a heaven.
So, to that question, let's look at this logically. So, approximately, give or take, there's around 4,000 gods worshipped from planet Earth. These are actually documented gods that people have worshipped, not fictions.
Yeah.
Not fiction. According to not all, but the majority of those religions, especially the big ones, 3,999 of those gods are fake, false gods.
Yeah.
So what would be more logical? If there's 4,000 things and 3,999 of them are potentially wrong, or would it be more logical for me to think that all 4,000 of them are wrong?
Why take the chance at that point?
Yeah.
Because at that point, if you have, like, 1 in 4,000 to be right, then, quite honestly, being a part of the wrong religion brings you farther. Being like an agnostic atheist or an agnostic theist puts you at the standpoint of, there might be a God and I don't know, but being so devoted to one religion, quite honestly, might bring you farther apart from the real thing.
Honestly.
There's only one counter argument I can think of, and it's just saying, well, but it exists. And that's all they can say, is that the God they believe in exists. I can't think of a counter argument to that statement.
And it's the right God.
Yeah.
Remember back in the very beginning when we first started, we talked about how most of their arguments were strong arm or straw, meaning circular in motion, so there's no way to disprove it.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember you talking to me about that. About when we're in that one restaurant and you were talking about how a lot of the arguments that religious people make are like straw man arguments, logical fallacies, and like it just disproves itself basically. It's crazy how that works, and the only way you can back that up is saying, well, it's right. It's not much of a debate.
Yeah, exactly.
Huh.
That's why it's so hard to debate. And back to the quote, not saying religious people are idiots. This is just the extreme, right? Of it's hard to argue with an intelligent person, but it's impossible to argue with an idiot. I've changed that to either ignorance or blissfulness or obliviousness, right? Both of those make sense because the fact that you're wrong doesn't make you an idiot necessarily, but it's just that's the extreme, right? So if they might be oblivious to a certain point of view or ignorant, thinking that they're the only one who can be right? So that's why it's so hard to debate, is because, not saying they're not intelligent, but they're not willing to back up their claims with all of this evidence, and the only thing they can say is, well, it's right. Not much of a debate you can give there.
I feel like the greatest example is fighting with two extremely stubborn people.
Yeah.
Take the two most stubborn people in the world, put them in an argument that is two-sided. There's very obviously two sides to it.
Yeah.
Make sure that whatever you're arguing against is they have differing opinions on. who is going to crumble? Who's
the
going to
intelligent person, dude?
Yeah. But who's to say who's more intelligent? Who's to say even though the stubborn one that isn't the most intelligent out of both of them isn't going to quit? But then the other stubborn one won't want to say that he's lost because the other person's continuing. So the argument isn't over.
Sorry, I'm writing something.
You're good.
I think you're right. To add to that, I would say, I think it's how you approach it too. I don't care what you're talking about. If one person approaches it with, "You're wrong," and I'm going to explain to you why, you're already behind.
Yeah.
You've already lost, right?
Yeah.
Because nobody likes to be wrong. So I find that if you ask them to explain themselves, and if they allow you to explain yourself, then a lot can come from it. You can both learn.
Might not agree, but still.
Exactly.
That's human. Like, that's what I feel like a lot of people get wrong, though, is that a lot of people will just argue to argue. And I mean, I'm a hypocrite for saying that, because I've done that before. I feel like everyone has argued just to argue.
Oh, yeah. It's
Whether
fun.
you are right or you're wrong. Yeah. There are fun arguments, and then there's also those bad arguments that are just stupid, and that, you know, you're not gaining much. You're
Leads
just
to more harm.
arguing. Yeah. But there's a difference between having a discussion and a debate. And there's a difference between having a debate and an argument. A debate, you're learning someone else's opinion that you can then compare and contrast from your own opinion and say either I don't agree with that opinion, or you can say, let me add this to my opinion.
Yeah.
You know?
Now we're at 155, so if you
We
guys
can go over a bit.
Yeah, we can go over a bit, but I'm saying we're gonna have to think of like some wrap-up arguments.
Sounds good. Time flies.
It really does. I remember the beginning, like the first hour of this, I was like, it's going a bit slow. But then 55 minutes just went by, so I don't really know how
right?
much that one really lasts.
I kept looking at it, I was like, okay, it's at 15, it's at 27 minutes. We have 1 hour and 30 minutes more to go. And then all of a sudden I look back, it's like 1 hour and 55.
And
Honestly.
I feel like we've like touched on a fraction of religion.
Yeah.
No, there's a whole
we've
podcast
literally-
on it. Atheist podcast.
Yeah. We've literally only talked about one religion out of the 40,000 that have been documented.
4,000.
Sorry, 4,000,
Feels
not
like
40,000.
40,000.
It does, though. And there could be over 40,000 something odd hours discussing them, so.
No, more than that.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is literally just three people talking about one religion. Can't really, go too far into it.
2 kids and a dude who grew up in a church.
One of them who's just gone in like a couple of times and then walked out.
Yeah. That's how we should have titled this.
Three dudes
okay.
talk about
Too funny.
Christianity. Like I said, like I say this a lot, and I know I just said it, but like this is my favorite.
Do you really have to say that in the podcast?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. It's just I don't know, but
Well,
I
I can
Go on.
I can truthfully say that this is my favorite too.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, honestly, like I've been surrounded by religion my whole entire life. So to finally be able to talk about this, learn from it, and see 2 other different perspectives, it was a fast 2 hours.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like I've learned so much.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point of this podcast. Like, it's just, yeah.
I like that. I like that comment. You should, maybe they should be on the podcast.
Maybe they should. Like, the whole point we did this podcast, or at least for me, is if we can't gain another opinion, I at least want to give it. Because it's always good to get someone else's opinion on any matter.
An opinion you're okay with people looking at with different views, at least, and not one saying, I'm right, you're wrong.
Yeah, no. I feel like we've all done a pretty good job of leaving this pretty open-ended.
Mm-hmm.
We definitely have our quote-unquote bias, but our bias is at least open-ended to other people's views.
Yeah.
And we just have constructed our own opinion on these views.
I would like to do a few plugs real quick.
I was literally about to do that as well. I was about to plug the Discord.
Yeah, I was about to plug the Discord that you should join if you haven't already. Also, the Twitch and YouTube right now, we're streaming live on Twitch. For the Twitch viewers, you can go ahead and check out our YouTube videos, maybe streams you've missed. They get uploaded and typically separated into clips. This one isn't, it's a big live clip. And you can check those out if you've missed any or if you want to see any of the previous podcasts. But for the YouTube viewers, if you want to catch us live and early, we're live practically every Friday, and we start around 7:30 EST, 8 maybe. But also, if you want to be informed on podcast info and just want to hang out with the Midnight Milk podcast community, go ahead and join our Discord. All of those links are in the description below.
Of course. And not only that, if you have any other suggestions that you would like to see, or if you have any ideas on different topics or anything like that, please either leave them down in the comments below for the YouTube, or, just like Zenith said, join the Discord. We are also usually in the VCs where you could come and talk to us if you would like to.
Or just join them and we'll join you.
Oh yeah, of course. So any feedback is good feedback. And if you have any ideas from this podcast that you would like to mention, please do so in the Discord. We would love to hear from our community.
I'd like to point out our profile pictures and who they made by, because you might see these on a podcast for a little bit, but other than Jeremy, me and Storm's profile pictures were made by our friend Jay, or Rumi is their, I guess, online name. But they're a really good artist. I'd recommend commissioning them, but they made art for our characters for our profile pictures, and I really appreciate that. I'd like to thank them for that. I'd also like to thank my uncle Jeremy for being featured, for coming on the podcast and giving his points and views. It was very interesting, and I'm so glad you came.
Yes, same here.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate being here. I had so much fun.
Yeah.
You guys, I got to tell you, you both, just from the little time I've spent with you, you're both outstanding young human beings, and I honestly can't wait to see what the rest of your lives look like.
Thank you so much. This has been nice.
Yeah, definitely. You should pull and with that.
And with all that being said, I hope you guys have enjoyed this Midnight Milk ride. It has been quite fun, and I hope for the people here that have been listening in, which there are quite a few, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And as Zenith said, please go check out the YouTube. All of this will be posted down there. But, you know, as I always say, we will be heading off to the store to restock our fridges with milk, preferably with the longest expiration dates, and throw out any of the old milk that we may have, which doesn't usually happen because I drink it all. But with all that, I hope you guys have enjoyed. Thank you again, Jeremy, for joining us on this Midnight Milk ride, and we hope to see you again. Thank you so much, and yeah, goodbye.
See ya.
Awesome. Thank you guys.